Alright, alright. So I want to add a smaller creature in the sewers. I want to add something a little smaller. And yeah, maybe a drainfly would be good. Let's look at some images of drainflies. They're very particular. Yeah, they're very hairy. They're kind of cute. They are kind of cute. Yep. A praying mantis would be pretty good. A praying mantis would be pretty good. Let's see. Is there any? Because they're all from above. Can I see? Oh, there you go. It's very dark, though. Yeah, I can't really make out the... Oh. Oh, okay, there we go. Look at that one. Really looking down. Really keeping its head down. Okay, but how to make this into... How to make this... How to make that creature something horrible. Because I can't just draw it as is. It's just too cute. It needs to be a horrible monster. Maybe it could have two poses. Maybe it could have a pose from afar, and it looks more like a bug, and then a pose where it gets a lot closer, and now you see underneath it is just a big face. That's always a good... It's always a good little twist. I've done this exact twist like 3 or 4 times in Malison, I think. But hey, it's a good one. Now, okay, so let's make the one farther away look very cute. So that way, when it gets close, that'll make it extra spooky. I struggle to get a read on that, on the pattern on those wings. Like from above, you can't really see the pattern because you just see through. And here you see like there's some really strong iridescence going on. And here you see the pattern a bit better, but it's still really faint. It almost looks like it could be something in the foreground or something. And here you kind of see just mainly some stripes. It's a little tricky. I feel like this one's really the best one I got to work from, though. These are drain flies. They're very common in bathrooms and kitchens, I imagine. I imagine Placide would be very familiar with them. I imagine to Placide, those are like face mites to Placide now. Don't look those up though. You'll probably regret looking up face mites if you don't know about them. It's one of those things. The human microbiome, haha. I mean, it's nothing that bad. It's just, you know, we just don't think of insects that way usually, you know? We don't really think of insects as being part of our microbiome. But, they are. Hey, Nightwinger, I'm happy to hear it. No, I would say no. Steel Soldier. I would say making all the maps first and then making all the enemies. Like, it might be the kind of thing that I do in a game jam where like we have to do a bunch of things at once, and because of this, we end up doing things like in a weird order. But unless there's like a weird thing forcing me to do like to work on a weird schedule, I would not do that. I would usually go area by area and make them fully, because that's the only way for you to know that the area is working. You need to be testing it, you know? You need to be like, you need to try out what you've made. So to do this, you need to have like the full area done. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be fully done, you know, like the assets don't need to be final or anything like that. But you need to at least get it to like a working state. You know? You want to get something in a working state as early as you can, so you can just try it out. You know? Okay, so let's see. How do I handle these colors? Because, you know, these are lots of grays and just tiny bits of green hues in there. And lots of little bits of brown. You get a little bit of red in there, a little purple. But, you know, that doesn't fit super well here, so I might need to exaggerate the colors a little bit. I'm going to start with grays still, because that's still going to be, like, getting me there. And also the head is, like, really solid black because it's got these big... It's got these big black eyes that really dominate the head, and that kind of gives the impression that it's just a solid black head. Yeah, I'll be going into stuff like this in the workshop. This is exactly the kind of advice I want to give in the workshop. Yeah, this sort of thing about how to approach, like, putting together level design and all that. Like, that's exactly the kind of thing that it's going to be about. Art cons? No, I've never... The only con I've ever been to is PAX. And that was like years ago for Barclay 2. Rad Baby, be a party member? Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? Let alone the present. For replicating my art, my style, that's difficult. That's actually kind of tricky. Huh. You know, you don't usually think of how you draw as like a style to replicate. I think I have a few things. I mean, usually just using the same color palette and like using the same color palette and also using black outlines is going to get you most of the way there. But otherwise, it's always a little tricky to give instructions on replicating like your own style, because, you know, like to me, that's not really a style. It's just how I draw, right? So I don't really think of it that way. I've just been very lucky to work with artists that are just really good at either at replicating my style or who are just, you know, just do really good assets either way. Hey, Dumpster Cats, speaking of very talented artists I work with, here's Dumpster Cats, who detailed a lot of the game's monsters. Yeah, without Dumpster Cats, a lot of monsters would have ended up being just horrible sketches at the end for launch. Dumpster Cats really went hard. And actually, Dumpster Cats is the one that detailed the interior of the Hell car, which was really amazing work. Yep, Dumpster Cats also detailed Jeanne, yes. It's really tricky to get this look right. That's a really tricky one to do. Maybe if I had like more, if it was a bit bigger, it might be a bit easier, but It's really tricky to get this look here. I'll give it a shot, though. I think if I keep plugging at it, it'll end up as something that kind of looks right. Well, at first, Dodogan, I actually wanted there to be a way for you to take Tickle out of there without having to kill him. But unfortunately, actually kill her, I think, because I think only female ticks. Yeah, I think someone said only female ticks drain blood. But yes, there originally was supposed to be a way for you to peacefully handle this, but I just ran out of time for it. It might end up being in the game in a later update. Yeah, there could be a way in a later update. The original idea, and this might come back, so this might be spoilers. This is spoilers? Question mark? Because it depends on whether or not the plan remains like that. The original plan was to have that you can take Tickle with you, but instead of joining you as a party member, Tickle joins you as a status effect. As a permanent status effect. That was the idea. It's a permanent status effect character. Yep. There is actually right now in the icons, there is a Tickle face icon that was meant to be like for the status effect. Because, you know, all status effects have little icons. Well, not all of them. It should be in there. I'm pretty sure I didn't remove it, even though I didn't have time to implement that. It should be up here. There it is. See? That's the Tickle status effect. You have a friend for life. Friend for life. Yeah, that's definitely goober material. But yes, I still like the idea, but I've since learned there's some problems with that idea, unfortunately. There's some problems with that idea that make implementing it a little complicated. Basically, the problem is that you can't really trust RPG Maker status effects to be permanent. That's the big thing. This was the original issue. This was the original reason why when you lost your arm, sometimes you got it back then. This should be fixed now. But back then, there was a problem where you could grow your arm back. Yeah, sometimes, because it was a status effect. This is how I initially handled losing your arm. It was a status effect internally. It was just a permanent status effect that doesn't go away. But there's a bunch of things that just remove all status effects, like dying. When a character goes unconscious, they just lose all status effects once they revive, right? So that's one. And you know, because of this, having something that happens that's a permanent status effect, yeah, there's problems. There might still be ways to do it, though. There might still be ways to do it. Like, one thing that makes a status effect stick is if it comes from an item. So I could make it that Tickle is an accessory, a locked, like a cursed accessory. That gives you that status effect. That could be one way to do it. Although I kind of don't want to do this too much. There's already a lot of cursed items. And, you know, in the end you end up with just losing so many equipment slots that it's kind of frustrating to lose so many equipment slots, because equipment slots, you know, cursed items are a frustrating thing, especially when you don't have any way to remove them. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I want to do, but I still like the idea, so I'll definitely be looking into how to make it work. It could just be a status effect, and I just put something in to make sure that if you lose it, it just comes back, you know? That can probably work. There's probably some sort of, you know, there's probably some solution there if I work on it hard enough. And I could also just do the same thing that I ended up doing with the arm, with losing your arm. I just made it not a status effect. I just made it something that's hard-coded. But I really like the idea, the visual idea, that this little creature that joins you is a status effect instead of a party member. That's just really amusing. That's just so stupid. But it's also kind of cute. So, it's just a tiny little creature, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I really like the idea that Tickle is a status effect instead of a recruit. Yes, there is going to be at least 4 more super bosses, at least, that are like, that I really want to put in. I just don't know when they're going to be going in. I don't think they're going to be going in for 1.5. I think they might be a 2.0 thing. Yeah, there's at least 4 extra super bosses that need to go in. And you can see their sprites. You can see their sprites if you check the game's files right now. It's the 4 astronomers. When they turn on the roof, like you can just see their sprites. Like they were meant to be something you fight. You were meant to fight them originally. Or no, it's not that you were meant to fight them. You were meant to be able to fight them, to like put them out of their misery. Originally, if you fail them and they turn into the monster, like you could choose to attack them. Yeah. The sprites are in the game. I mean they're not implemented, but and also they're not all finished. Only one of them is finished, really. The others are still like sketchy. But yes, I just ran out of time. Both to draw them fully to like finish their assets, but also I ran out of time to design the fights, and I didn't want to put them in as just a placeholder fight. I wanted to wait for them to be actually like ready to be like a good battle. I didn't want to like, yeah. There were already a lot of fights in the game that were sort of placeholder-ish, and I thought, all right, these guys, I'll actually leave them out entirely until they're ready, you know? I think so, yeah. They would probably drop something. I mean, super bosses are really fun when they give you cool rewards. But a big part of it, too, is that the idea was supposed to be that if you completely fail the ritual, so you fail all 4, and, you know, you get, like, the bad ending, where you don't even see what happens to you, it's just text. If you got that ending, but you also defeated all 4, there would probably be like an alternate ending, because that would be like really difficult to do. Like this is like you would need to fight 4 super bosses in a row. Like that would be legitimately a challenge, even though it's like the easiest ending to get, because you don't even have to do anything. Then proceeding to kill all 4 of them in a row would legitimately be one of the hardest challenges in the game. Yeah, so there would need to be something that this unlocks. There would need to be some sort of thing that, you know, there would need to be something that acknowledges that you did that. So I think there would probably be some sort of special ending if you failed the ritual completely, but you fought and killed all 4 of them. That would probably be like some new ending. So that's another reason to not put them in, even though as like placeholders, because, you know, I prefer to just add them in once it's all done. So yeah, that's at least 4 extra super bosses. Yeah, adding more places where you can see where people you can meet, like where people you meet actually live, would be good. That would be good. Okay, you know, I'm starting to like this drainfly. I feel like this drainfly is starting to shape up. I mean, it's a little hard to parse, though. Is that texture is really intense. Maybe I need to tone down the texture in some parts here, so the fly shape is easier to read a little. Yep, this is the faraway sprite. Also, oh yes, someone was asking. Yeah, yes, the cursed remain. Yes, they remain monstrous after the 15 days. I mean, I said I don't want to answer like. I don't really want to answer lore questions too much, but I mean, this one I feel is already answered by the endings. I feel like in text, this one is already kind of answered. So I don't feel too bad about answering it. Yeah, this album has really grown on me. This Jethro. I did not really listen to it much before like last year. It really grew on me, especially this song. Yeah, I'm starting to like. Yeah, I think this Drainfly is starting to look good here. The Whistler, yeah. Yeah, I like it. But I think this song is my favorite on this though. The title track. We'll have to see, Dodegan. We'll have to see. Yeah, I'm starting to like this. It's kind of hard to parse still, but I feel like it's getting there. Like this is getting readable. Maybe I should kind of mess with the wings a bit to make them more obviously wings. That would probably really help to identify this as a fly, even though that would make it less... It would make it a bit less accurate. But I mean, some images of drainflies here, the wings look more like regular fly wings. Maybe you just didn't believe in Philippe enough. I'm sorry. When you hold his lifeless little body and you close your eyes, if your belief in Philippe is strong enough, and you give him a little kiss on his tiny little mouth, yes, he will absolutely wake up. And you can get married. And hey, I mean, if he wakes up and he's still mean, you can always just misery it. You can always just go misery on him, you know? You know? Just take care of him until he feels better. Until he starts acting like himself. Yeah? You can always just misery it. So where do I put those wacky antennae? Yeah, I think I'm going to make the wings less fuzzy, because I think that's gonna just make it way easier to read as a fly that way. And I'll keep, you know, the fuzz here, and I'll keep the fuzz at like the edges of the wings. But I think that's just gonna be easier for most people to realize, oh, this is a fly. But yeah, the shape is just very unusual. And the texture feels very unusual too. Also, another type of fly that's kind of hairy like that is botflies, right? I think botflies tend to have that. I feel like botflies usually have like these. There's potentially more endings coming. Yes, we'll see. We'll see. We have a lot of plans. This is the thing. We have a lot of plans for 2.0, but we're going to need to triage them over the next few months. So if you ask me, like, if there are plans for X, the answer is almost certainly yes, because there's just a lot of plans, but there's no way we'll do all of them. So, you know, right now there's just a lot of plans, but we'll probably do about half of them or something. Yeah, we're thinking 2.0 for Halloween, yes. That's kind of what we're thinking. At least that's the goal, but you know how it is. We might end up missing that. Sure. Maybe I could talk about the things that were scrapped after 2.0 comes out. Unless it seems like there might be another update later that adds more. But, I mean, we'll see. You know, if 2.0 somehow leads to, like, even more sales of the game, and maybe expanding it further still is gonna make sense. You know, we need to measure our plans based on the budget we end up with, you know? Okay, I think I like this a little better. The shape of the wing isn't right, though. It should be, like, a bit pointy. Yeah, it's supposed to be more pointy like this. There we go. An adorable creature. I've been making pixel art since about 2004, I think. Yeah, right, 2004. 2008 is when I started taking it more seriously, I think, so. So depending on how you count it, maybe 2008 is a more representative start date. 2004 is when I first started making games, and when I first started working on a little platformer that didn't have any, that needed like art assets just so you can have something to move around the screen. So that's where I actually started, because I just needed to. I didn't want to draw. I was just a programmer, or really just a kid having fun with Game Maker. And I just drew because I literally needed it. It wasn't an interest at all. But then around 2008, I think, is when I started doing it just for fun. Yeah, Sluggy's Adventure. Yeah, this is the first. Let's see if I can find images of this. No, I'm finding the sequels. There we go. Sluggy Adventure, the first level. There it is. That was back in 2004. There's another one. That's what it looked like. So yeah, this was my pixel art at first. Sluggy Adventure. And yeah, I made the main character a slime because that way I didn't have to make a walking animation. And also when swimming, it was like a bubble instead, right? There you go, that's Sluggy. I've been making Sluggy games ever since. Every few years having a new Sluggy game. This is also where Honko comes from. Well, Honko comes from Honko's Worlds. There's Honko. I didn't actually put Sluggy anywhere in Look Outside, but I probably should. Honko's there. Honko's there. Why isn't Sluggy there? They are married. That's canon. It is canon. Where is Sluggy? Also, you want to see Honko? Honko's true form? Not everyone has seen Honko's true form. Not everyone has seen Honko's true form. No, that's the plan. That's the original planned map for Honko's worlds. Hang on, that's not. There we go. There's Honko's worlds. That's Honko. Honko real. Honko real. Well, that's the title screen, but this is the actual character sprite in the game. A little different in tone. No, the Honko game is a game about sailing and saving Honko's children from the pirate. How about I try to make them a little bit iridescent? Because I'm seeing some iridescence on these images. I'm seeing some iridescence on here. So why not? Let's go. Let's go nuts. Let's go crazy. Let's go crazy. Let's go nuts. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That's a plucky little fly. Okay, now, what to do about... Also, there's kind of like a bright white triangle of hair on the head. And then there's the actual antenna, which I fear I might screw up here. I don't know. I don't know if I'm really nailing those antennae. They're supposed to look like little feathers. They just don't really look the part here. So the angle I put them in is a bit weird. Let's make them more angled, like you would kind of expect. Yeah, I think that's more recognizable as antenna here. Okay, I think this is a bit better. Yeah, that's better. Maybe I'll move this leg to intersect this antenna a bit less. Same for this one. Just to clarify their shape a little. Yeah, I like that. And maybe... Yeah, there you go. That looks good. Okay, this is what they look like from the underside. The idea of the fungus area started as a the idea was basically a siren song for gamers. That was the starting point. The gamer's siren song, which is unlocking new gameplay mechanics. A dungeon tailor-made to attract gamers. Hey, thank you, Atikasori. No, that was kind of what I expected for Philippe. I mean, the game goes pretty hard and like goes all in on the idea of like playing around with the thought that you can be like in denial about it. So, yeah. We designed Phil. We designed Phil specifically. Phil's role is very well suited. Yeah, that Phil knows what he's doing. Beta Plus, were you someone who was following for Malison? Yeah, no, I've been streaming on Twitch this whole time. No, it's a drainfly. They do look like moths. I mean, maybe they're actually more related to moths than flies. I don't know. I don't know their taxonomy. I mean, those antennae really do look a lot like something on a moth, huh? I mean, especially... Wait, maybe this one isn't actually the same animal, huh? Because, I mean, look at these. Look at these antennae. I mean, it kind of looks like the same animal, but... Oh, today I actually started. This is probably why you found the channel, the Twitch. I actually started putting up slightly edited VODs of streams on my YouTube channel. So if you miss a stream, you can find some slightly edited down and slightly sped up versions of the stream. Basically, anytime I'm not talking, I just speed up the footage. So basically, it turned like a 5-hour stream into like a 40-minute stream, a 40-minute video, and a second like hour-and-a-half video that's gonna come out tomorrow. So you know, it's a bit more digestible than the streams. Yep. This is why I did this, actually. I did this in preparation. because I had not actually done any video editing on this setup yet, because this is a new machine. I had to like get some new equipment because I lost a bunch of stuff last year in the flood. I have a bunch of new stuff, and I had to make sure. Actually, one thing I actually got for something I actually got. Hang on, where is it? Oh, actually, DaVinci Resolve is still open. Whoops. I should. This is what I've been using to edit stuff. There you go. Doesn't need to be open. And I have Frisky Mouse. I got Frisky Mouse. I'll be using this for the presentation, for the workshop that starts. I'm using this. There you go. With that, I can click on the screen. You kind of see what's happening. That should make it a bit easier to point at things. I also have another stronger one. But I think that should help. I'm not gonna have this when I'm drawing, of course, but that'll be pretty important for the when I need to actually point at things on screen. That should be useful for that. It's not a solo game. It is not a solo game. It started as almost a solo game, because it started as a game jam. And so it was closer to a solo game for the first month. But after this, when it turned into a more serious project, I got a lot of help from freelancers and very, very talented artists, and also there's also a co-writer who's also composed all of the game's music. It is not a solo project. For the first month, it was closer to being a solo project, but even there, the co-writer was already like writing music for it. Maybe. There might be some more spine things. Who knows? Like I said, if you're asking me if there's plans for something, the answer is almost certainly yes. The question isn't really if there's plans for something as much as, is it going to be part of the plans that we're going to end up doing? Because we have a lot of stuff. We have like a whole hidden forum full of threads that are all like single bits of things that we want to add to 2.0. But we're definitely not going to have time to add all of it. So yeah, there's a lot of plans, but it's almost like a brainstorm kind of thing, where, you know, all of the unsorted ideas are in one place, and then we're going to need to decide which of these we actually like the most. Well, I mean, if I'm competing with Oblivion as Game of the Year, Oblivion is the Game of the Year every year. Game of the Year edition, Oblivion, 20 years in a row. I don't think any of the writing in Look Outside can really comes even close to the ultimate, the absolute summum of writing. The absolute scene. I don't think anything in Look Outside even touches this scene.
I hope I can help. Necromancy may be legal in Cyrodiil, but few will openly admit to practicing it now that the Mages Guild has banned it. Farewell.
May you rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. Yes. I don't think anything in Look Outside even comes close to that shit. May he rest in peace. Just absolute. I don't think anything in Look Outside even comes close to that. I don't. We cannot. We can't even touch that shit. We can't even touch that shit. In a league of its own. Well, I'm glad you like it. I am glad you like it. And hey, if you like Look Outside, boy, I root for you. There's another. That's Look Outside was the little side project. There's a big game coming. There's a big game coming. That's right. I mean, Look Outside from the start. Look Outside was basically, I mean, at first it was just a game jam game, but the reason we went to like, we wanted to like turn it into a full release, like the core reason wasn't even to like make money from it. It was, hey, you know, this is going to be a lot like Malison. There's a lot of overlap here, so if we put this out and people like it, it's going to be really good advertising for when Malison comes out later. That was literally the thought. We didn't really expect it would sell that well. We thought, you know, it might sell okay. It might sell okay. But, you know, it's an RPG Maker game. We can't have too high expectations. No, it's not. You can't wishlist it yet. It's not actually even announced officially yet. Devolver are still... Devolver have to be coy every time I mention it. And act like they don't know what I'm talking about. Because as far as they're concerned, you know, it's not announced yet. But I've been just talking about it openly on my end this whole time. It sold just okay. It didn't sell super, super crazy. But for an RPG Maker game, it sold really well. We actually hit 60,000 sales. We hit 60,000 sales like 2 days ago, I think. So it went really well. It went really well. But yeah, we were expecting it would sell like 20,000 or something like that at best. That's... But no, it's still selling. It's still selling. Probably gonna reach like 100,000 sales. And you know, it's definitely sold enough that it's gonna really help actually fund the rest of Malison, because I was out of funds for it. This is one reason why Malison's been taking so long, is that one of the reasons Malison's been taking so long is that I had to basically do freelance work to pay for it. So I had to just take some freelance jobs, and of course that took away time from actually working on it directly, and that really slowed things down. But with that, with the profits from Look Outside, I'm not gonna need to do any freelancing work for a while. I'll be able to just focus on it once I stop working on Look Outside, of course. Yes, Manly's video did a lot of good for the game. The sales chart for the game had been starting to droop down, and then Manly's video just kicked it all back up. So that was excellent. It's now starting to go back down a little bit, but it's still higher up than like the week before Menley's video. So yeah, it did really, really good for the game. Yeah, it actually, so originally this was just like I said, it was just like a game jam game. This is how it started, and usually game jam games, they don't really make any waves. Usually game jam games, they come out and like a few hundred people play them and that's it. But this one, after that initial jam launch, so that the first build that was on itch.io, it really blew up. Like a lot of people were talking about it, a lot of people were playing it. It went pretty high up in like the itch.io like, you know, most popular games that month. It didn't reach like the top too much, but it went pretty high. And a bunch of people were making videos about it. There's actually a bunch of really old videos you can find about Look Outside that are actually from way before the game launched. And those are talking about like these old prototype versions of the game. And that's when I thought, well, this seems like an opportunity. Like, we got another very similar game to this that will be coming, you know, not soon, but at one point. So if we can, like, if we can fan the flames on that, maybe this could be a really good way to set the stage for Malison to come out later. Now, Malison isn't exactly the same as Look Outside. It's not just like another game just like it, but there's a lot of overlap. But for instance, Malison is more of a fantasy, like a medieval fantasy kind of game. It is still a horror game, but it's more like, yeah, it's more medieval than modern. So it's almost like a horror D&D kind of thing. You know, with magic and all that, with wizards, of course. Of course, there's wizards. Also, Malison is a little bit less like a JRPG mixed with a horror game, and it's more like a CRPG mixed with a horror game. At least it has a lot more CRPG elements to it than Look Outside did. Yeah, like Baldur's Gate and Fallout, and not the modern Fallouts, and not Baldur's Gate 3, more like, yeah, the older Baldur's Gate and stuff like that. Visually, it still looks more like a JRPG, but when you play it, it's a bit more like you're assigning skills and stuff. You're kind of building characters. It's very open-ended. It's more like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of RPG. There's a lockpicking minigame, you know, stuff like that. You know, actually, Oblivion is another example. It's more like Oblivion, you know, in a sense. But it is set in a city. It is set in a cursed city filled with weird monsters. It's made in GameMaker. GameMaker is actually the engine I'm most familiar with. I've been using GameMaker for like 20 years now. 21 years even. Well, Malison actually started back then as an RPG Maker game. Like when I started that project like 10 years ago, it was actually an RPG Maker game. Because when I first started it, and you can actually see this if you check my YouTube videos, my really old ones about Malison, It was called Weekend RPG back then. It was like the name. That was like the working title of the project, Weekend RPG. Because I was working on another game at the time. I was working like during the week. I was working on another game. That took a lot. Took basically most of my time. And that game had a lot of animation in it. And because of this, I couldn't really draw like monsters that were like really detailed. I couldn't really like get really into like super detailed pixel art. All pixel art had to be really simple because everything had to be animated. And I basically started what would eventually become Malison as just an excuse to draw a bunch of monsters without having to worry about animating them. It was just like for fun. I just wanted to draw a bunch of monsters and not have to worry about overly detailing them. And so I thought, hey, making an RPG Maker game where you just fight and like the monsters are not animated, right? They're just big things and they're just big sprites you fight. So it seemed like an RPG Maker game with combat seemed like a really good place to go. But then over time, at first I was just drawing monsters. I didn't have too much of a specific idea for what I was. But that over the first few months that I did this for fun, I started to form an idea of what I wanted to do. And the original idea of what I wanted to do was actually a lot like what Fear and Hunger would eventually become. But over time, it would pull away from that. This is something I've talked about a few times before. Mechanically, tonally, it wasn't necessarily like Fear and Hunger, but mechanically, the idea that like it's like the idea that it's a turn-based RPG, but the battles are almost like puzzles that you can solve, either by doing the right things in combat or by just having the right tools and approaching most of the combat that way. That was actually kind of the design at first for Malison. But over time, I pulled away from that. And it became a bit more like a regular CRPG kind of game. So I really loosened the design of the battles. And it became more just about building a party. It became it became less rigid. Battles didn't really have a specific solution to them. It was more about building your own party and making up your own solutions. Or just finding weird ways to make your party work, or making weird party combinations. So it became more like freeform and less rigid. But it started out as more of a rigid, almost puzzle-like RPG. That was like that's kind of what it was when it was an RPG Maker game. But then it had that shift over time after I shifted it to being a Game Maker project. Because making it into a Game Maker project meant I basically had to start over. And I basically had to just make a new engine entirely. And in making a new engine, I could just kind of make the whole thing myself. I wasn't really... It didn't really need to be based on how RPG Maker worked anymore. So I could just do whatever I wanted. And in doing this, I just kind of I just slowly moved away from the design of that original. It's actually a bit less serious than Look Outside. I would say it's a bit... there's a lot of tone shifts. But I would say it's a bit more whimsical than Look Outside. But there's still, shifts in tone and horrifying moments and all that. But yes, it's still very much... it's written by the same people. It's basically written in the same way. Like, the way that we wrote Look Outside, that we worked on it, is basically the same way that we wrote Malison back then. Like, the co-writer for Look Outside is also the co-writer for Malison. And I'm also, the main writer for Malison and was for Look Outside. It's basically the same. And a lot of the other people that have been helping A lot of people that helped with Look Outside were also all people that helped with Malison. Like, it's basically the same team. Yeah, you can see the monsters that appear at the top right of the screen. These are all things from Malison. Malison, like I said, started out as just an excuse to draw a bunch of monsters. And because of that, and because I've been working on it for 10 years now, there's a pretty absurd number of monsters in the game. There's a lot of monsters in the game. I think it's maybe... Is it time to show it? Now let's show that. I have a spreadsheet of all of the monsters in Malison. All the monsters that have stats. So anyone here who doesn't actually know, care to make a guess for how many monsters there are in Malison, the Cursed City? My main project I've been working on for 10 years. 34. Well, you see here, this is a little spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet, and they're all separated in categories here. And you see the numbers here on the side. So, if you don't count NPCs, it goes up to 1,300. If you don't count NPCs. And some of the NPCs are monsters too. Because the NPCs are basically just creatures that have dialogue. So if you count NPCs, but that would count a bunch of humans and like normies there. But if you counted the NPCs as well, it would be 1,700. So that's basically all the creatures, all the characters you can speak to. And also, like, some of these lines are taken by like group labels. So like maybe remove like 100. So maybe like 1,600 is more accurate there. Yeah. So it's a big game. I've been working on it for a long time. I've been working on this for quite some time. And I think some of my best work is in that. It's still not... how many are in Look Outside? I think there's maybe like 120 or something monsters in Look Outside. So Malison has more than like 10 times that. Yeah, I think Look Outside has... I think it's something like I think it's under 200. I think there's under 200 monsters in Look Outside. I don't think there's above. Yeah, also Malison, although it has way more monsters in it, I'm not actually sure it's that much longer than Look Outside is. Like, I think a single playthrough, because a single playthrough of Look Outside is about 12 hours. I think Malison, a single playthrough, I don't think it's gonna be much longer than like 20 hours. So like the much larger monster count might seem like it's a much bigger game in scale. Well, in length. But I don't think it is bigger, but I don't think it's even twice bigger. I think it's just a little bit bigger. The thing is that it's a much wider game. It is an exploration game. That's the thing. That's the big thing about Malison. There's a lot of paths through the city. There's a lot of secret paths. There's an entire dungeon in the first chapter that leads you down to like... There's a whole dungeon hidden behind like a single secret wall in the first chapter that leads to like a whole like mini quest and a giant boss, and there's just so much hidden. This is like a secrets game, Malison is. There's so many paths through the game, so many alternate things, so many super hidden shit. So although like a single playthrough, if you just move towards the end, and you don't yeah, it's just got way more side stuff. Malison is a side content kind of game. Like, there is a main story, but like 80% of the stuff in Malison is side quests and weird secrets and all that. It's way less linear than Look Outside is. It's way more. I wouldn't say it's an open world game because it's still like sort of tight. It's like, because an open world game, you know, it's like a giant square, and you know, you start here and there's objectives all over. Malison isn't really like that. Malison is more like just a bunch of branching paths that are all dungeons, you know? Like, there's a starting point, and then the starting point has like kind of a main path, and then you reach chapter 2, and then chapter 2 is kind of like a main path, right? But along the way, there's a secret path here that leads to an alternate way to chapter 2, and there's another secret path here that leads to like an alternate way to reach the middle point of chapter 1, and there's another, like, there's all these like different alternate paths along the way that lead to like different things. So it's not an open world game. It's more like a kind of weird branching path maze of, like, you know, dungeons and things to find. So it's non-linear, but it's not open world, really. I would really like to try making an open world game at one point, but I don't like open world games usually. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's probably some open world games I would like, and one of my favorite games ever is an open world game. So, you know, there's definitely some way for me to like these. Star Control 2 is basically an open world game, right? So, you know, there's some games I like. I don't know when the game's going to come out, because I'm not even sure when I'm going to be back, like, fully working on it yet. Because now Look Outside is like its own thing. And I'll be working on some updates to Look Outside at least for still a little while. I kind of want to go back to look. So GameMaker. So like I said, Look Outside. Malison is made in GameMaker, and GameMaker should be coming out with the long-term stable build. The new long-term stable build should be coming out soon, and I'm kind of waiting for that. So once the long-term stable build comes out, I really want to spend some time on Malison to bring it up to that version, and then stay with that version until launch. So that's kind of what I'm waiting on, and I think the long-term stable is basically kind of gonna come out like alongside Deltarune, maybe. Like, it might be really soon. Because I think I remember something about Deltarune sort of affecting the release date of the long-term stable. Deltarune is made in GameMaker too, and it's probably by far the most famous GameMaker game. I think I remember something about how they kind of changed their plans for this because of Deltarune's next chapter release or something like that. Well, it's Malison. It's Malison that's a Game Maker game. Look Outside is RPG Maker MZ. I think I know that they added a feature to let you like load other games, like load other Game Maker games from one game to make like a launcher. Because they needed this to be able to make, to have all of the different chapters of Deltarune be packaged as one thing, but still keeping them as separate games. Because they wanted to basically be able to keep the project separate, I think. because I think like the project was just too big and too unwieldy to work on as if they were all merged together or something like that. I think it's something like that. But yes, that might mean the long-term stable is going to be coming out pretty soon, like next month. But I'm not sure. I don't think it's been confirmed or anything. Yeah, long-term stable is very good. Long-term stable basically means that because every time you update a game creation software, there's a risk that everything breaks. Right? Every time, because you know when game creation software gets updated, a bunch of stuff changes, a bunch of stuff is just gonna work differently now. Sometimes they might fix bugs that were there that your game might already be compensating for, and now that the bug is fixed, it actually breaks everything. Because now it's like, you know, your game is now overcompensating for something that's now fixed. Stuff like that. There's so much stuff that can happen from an update. And the long-term stable is basically gonna. It's basically, it's like a version of a software that just isn't going to get any changes to its features. It's only going to get fixes for problems that hurt stability. It's only going to receive like important fixes, and it's not going to get little tweaks or changes or new features. So that means if you're working on a project in the long term, like something like Malison, it's a really good idea to use a long-term stable version, because that means you get little stability updates, but you don't get stuff that's likely to break your project. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see when the LTS version, the long-term stable, comes out. I'll probably spend some time then, yeah, just fixing up Malison, making sure that it all works properly in the latest version. And after this, I'll probably just work on Look Outside version 2.0. After that, we'll see. So I like this, but where should I put like a mouth? I feel like there should be a mouth on there. Maybe here? Maybe like a nose. A nose between the legs here. Oh, there's an ad coming. Huh. Weird. Alright. Let's do a stretch then. Ooh. Let's do a stretch then. Yeah, it kind of goes against the pattern of the segments. I could probably make that work, so. I find it really hard to draw something scary. I don't think I've ever drawn anything scary. like, I think I've drawn things that, you know, if you think about what you're looking at, there's something really gnarly. But like a drawing that when you look at it, it gives you like a shiver, an actual shiver of fear. I don't think I've ever done something like that. And that's really hard to do. I mean, there's some things you can do that help, but it's really difficult. I feel it's really difficult to make a drawing genuinely scary. And my style doesn't really lend itself well to this because it's very cartoony. It kind of removes, like, to me, I feel like usually when a drawing is really genuinely scary, it has like kind of a very it has like an ethereal, real vibe to it. Even if it's not necessarily like realistic in style, it needs to be. I don't know. Yeah, there needs to be some sort of texture to it that feels real. I've drawn a few monsters where I was trying to make something that kind of sheds the cartoony look a little bit. And a lot of the shadow monsters in Malison were attempts to try to draw something that's actually kind of scary to look at, but I feel like I haven't really succeeded on any of them. They always just kind of end up cartoony, even when they're like a cool design. You know, a cool design doesn't really make a scary monster necessarily. Actually, the more you think it's a cool design, probably the less scary that makes it. Because you just think it's cool. You know? It's hard to be scared by something that you like. So when a design is just really compelling, because it's like a cool idea, that actually makes it less scary. It's really difficult. I don't know a lot of images that are like that. Some like scary internet images are actually really good at that. That's usually what makes, like, you know, a scary image go viral, is when it nails something really eerie in like a subtle way that really like makes it, that gives you like a shiver when you look at it, you know? Yeah, like Spine is, I mean, I feel like Spine is scary in concept with like the things it says, you know? Like these things are scary in concept. Like you need the narration with it to kind of get the scary part, you know? You don't really need, see what I mean? Yeah, that's what I mean by saying I don't think I've really drawn a scary image. And by that I mean an image that is scary with no context. That's the really tough part. So making something scary with no context, that is tough. Something that just gets you. It just hits you as soon as you look at it. That is difficult to do. And of course it's going to be super subjective. Everyone's going to get got by something different. You know, if you have a phobia of some kind, sometimes there's going to be some real layups on giving you a cold shiver when you're looking at something if you have some phobias, you know? But, you know, when it comes to something that's just kind of like universally or at least very widely scary to a lot of people, just by looking at it with no context needed, that is tough. And I don't think I've ever actually done that. You know? Yeah, Junji Ito, I would say, although with Junji Ito, it's hard to say, because Junji Ito's like full page illustrations, like jump scares, like page turning jump scares. they always have like an obvious like lead up to them, right? Like you don't really get to see those images out of context. They have a whole story leading up to them, right? Yeah. But I think some of them probably would be strong enough on their own to still give you a shiver, even if you had no context for them. Like, I'm sure some of them would absolutely be just gnarly enough. I mean, like, for instance, in Uzumaki, you know, that woman whose face, you know, turns into a spiral and the eye like sinks in, and like that is such a fucked up visual. You don't need a lot of explanation to understand just how fucked up this is, you know? Like, that's striking. There's a reason that image always comes back as one of the main things people share about that whole series, even though it's like a huge series with so many parts, because that is such an effective, gnarly concept. It does not really need... There is context to it in the story, but it doesn't really need it to get you, right? Yeah. Oh. A great example, too, is... the scary stories to tell in the dark illustrations. They're kind of infamous for that. They all have... all of those images... Yeah. All of those images from those books... I think there's like 3 books of those, right? They all accompany stories, but the images go viral on their own, you know? The stories they're attached to don't really go viral that much, because those images aren't really just that effective on their own. So I think those definitely count. And yes, that kind of texture, that kind of wispy... Of course, it's really difficult to do this in pixel art. Although I feel like well, if anyone can try to do that texture, it's you. Unsound Will is one of the artists who helped with Look Outside. And he's really good with color. The really amazing, like, colorful backdrops of when you reach the roof. This was all Unsilent Will's work. I just made like basic sketches of it, and he just went to town on them. He's the one like that really detailed those super striking backgrounds on the roof. See, Unsilent Will is really good with color. I feel like you could probably give it a shot. You could probably give it a shot to try to make this something like that. If anyone can do it with a limited color palette, I think it'll be you. Oh, that's great. Look at this little guy. Yeah, that's great. But yeah, the darkness monsters. If you've seen though the shades in Look Outside, those are like the really dark creatures that attack you when you have high danger. Those are kind of inspired of the darkness monsters of Malison. And yeah, those are basically when I try to do that. When I try to like make spooky monsters that are just scary to look at. That's basically the best I can do. And I think it's not... I don't think it really does it. They're not really... I don't think they really work as... I don't think they really even come close to actually being just scary to look at. You know, they're a little eerie, but you kind of need the You need the context that, oh, they're gonna kill you because they're really dangerous in the game, you know? Yeah, they make noises and they're unexpected. I think that they definitely need all of that context to be scary in Look Outside. I don't think they're really that scary on their own. I think the Malison ones are better, but they're still just a weird, goofy monster. I can show you some of those, some of the darkness monsters in Malison. You'll recognize kind of a similar style with them. There's a bunch. There is a bunch of those monsters. Let's see, how many do I have? I'm not going to show all of them. I'm not going to show all of them. I'm just going to, like, choose 2 of them to show. Okay, how many do I have of the big ones? These are the big boss ones. There's, like, 42 of them. 40 or 42 of them. I think some of these are doubled, so I think like the numbers showing me is like 46. Okay, no, there's 40. Yeah, there's 46 of them. Of the darkness monsters in Malison. And those are, it's a little similar to the things that appear in Look Outside, but instead of being based on like a danger meter that goes up, there's these areas in Malison that have a there's these sections in Malison that have this profound darkness in them. So there's these places where the darkness, like the shadows feel like they're mud or something. Like the darkness is thick and it's like smoke. And those places are cursed. And if you go into one of those, now there's a meter that starts appearing at the top of the screen. And if that meter depletes, one of these things start chasing you. And they are spooky. At least I tried to make them spooky. Let's see, which one should I show here? Oh, here's one of the first ones you encounter. There's several frames of it. But as you can see, it's goofy a little bit. That's just kind of my style, you know? Even when I try to make a really scary monster, it always ends up also kind of goofy. Now, for context, this is how they appear in context here. Because they're always in a completely black background, much like the monsters, the darkness monsters in Look Outside. So at first, a battle starts and it looks like this. And let's get the music that would play when you see one of those. So imagine you're going through a dark area and there's shadows, and the shadows are like smoke, and it's getting closer and closer, and you have a meter that depletes, right? And then a battle begins, but you didn't seem to really encounter anything. A battle just started. And then there's just this face. And let me try to get the music that plays. Yeah, there we go. So that's... There we go. So it's that. And when you see this, and then it gets closer, and then when it reaches a certain proximity, it switches to this song, which uses Mellotron, of course. And then it gets closer, and then switches to this when it gets really close. And then it just kills you, basically. So yeah, that's like a whole type of monsters, and this is where those danger monsters come from in Look Outside. That's where like the idea comes from. It's just a whole type of monster in Malison. Like I said, a lot of this stuff in Look Outside just has its origins in something a little bit similar in Malison. Also, similarly, how, you know, Helen also starts as a character in Malison and is kind of the same character, but also kind of not. She kind of is. She has huge gardening shears. In Malison, Helen looks more like Michael Myers than Jason Voorhees. And she has this giant pair of gardening shears that she's looking for. Let me find Helen's character image. Okay, so this is Helen in Malison. So she's a little different, but very similar still. But yeah, she has more of a more of a Michael Myers vibe. And she also joins your party. That part isn't new in Look Outside either. And when you ask her, because you find her in a jail, because so in Look Outside, you're exploring this city that's been overrun by monsters, and as you explore, you find like the guardhouse where the city watch is, and in the basement of the guardhouse, there's some cells, there's some jail cells down there, and she's in one of them. And before you open up, so it's kind of a similar vibe to that, you have to choose whether to open the door or not. But here it's for a prison cell, and you can ask her. You can ask her. So why did they put you in there? What did you do? And she says, "I didn't pay my taxes." There's something that's recurring in Look Outside. In Malison, actually, that I didn't really do much of in Look Outside. There's something that's recurring in Malison that I'm not sure if I've really done that much in Look Outside. Maybe there's a little bits of it. So in Malison, there's something I really like to do, which is to set a very obvious trap for the player. A very obvious trap, right? And just make it so obvious that the player is just kind of curious. What's gonna happen if I just walk right into it? Like, it's too obvious to be a genuine attempt at tricking you, right? And so it's so obvious that it actually becomes a better trap because now the player is curious. So at first, you know, well, I don't know if Philippe is an obvious, it becomes an obvious trick, but it doesn't really start out as an obvious trick. I mean, some parts of it are get more obvious over time. But you know. Yes, this is a trick I really like to do, is to just make the player really curious enough to walk willingly into a trap because they just want to know what's going to happen. And I really like to reward that too. Like I like to actually reward them for willingly walking into the obvious trap. So I'm essentially training the players to willingly walk into traps by rewarding them when they do it. I guess that is kind of present in Look Outside, in how, like, a lot of things that seem dangerous, a lot of characters that seem dangerous are actually just join you if you let them in, you know, like Helen. So maybe in that sense, it's like that. But yes, there's definitely a lot of that in Malison. I really like that kind of thing. One of my favorite moments in Chapter 1 of Malison, and I'm not going to spoil it here, but it's something like that. It's a creature trying to trick you, but is so obviously bad at it that it's hilarious. It's really funny in like the most fucked up way. And it's so bad that you know the game isn't actually trying to trick you in like a meta way. And so you just want to know what's going to happen. If you just act like this poor attempt at tricking you was actually successful. You just want to know what's going to happen. You know? This happens a few times. Yeah, and it's all about rewarding player curiosity. And in a game where you're really leaning into exploration, it's a good idea to do that. You don't want to slap the player's hand every time they do something wacky, if you actually want them to do wacky things. Of course, if you want them to take things super seriously and never take a chance like this, then you do the opposite, you know? You make them actually die if they do the stupid thing. But if that's not what you want, if you want them to actually be a bit adventurous, and you want them to try some wacky things sometimes, and just cut loose a little bit, and you might want to actually reward them for doing stupid things. Yes. I mean, I don't know if that's a reward. Yeah. I mean, that's more of an extremely good player prank, which I'm clearly not above doing. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. Maybe a little bit iridescence in these. I don't think I could really do this in Malison. I don't think I would do that scene that's being mentioned here in Malison. I don't think I could do something like this, because Malison's tone is flexible, but it's not that flexible. You know? I think that would come off as being something like that in Malison would be off. It would feel wrong. It would feel like it's not the right kind of game for it. It also for Look Outside. I don't think something like that would work in Look Outside. It's just the game doesn't have the tone for it. It's not goofy enough. It's not trolly enough. It would need to have a much more like bizarre, sort of antagonistic, sort of like dark humor vibe to it that Lisa has. That's good. I like him. Canvas size? Usually it's just based on the game's resolution. Try to look for like how many pixels am I actually working with in the game I'm working on. But I often also work on like giant sprite sheets like this. Like this is just a huge sprite sheet full of monsters. That's something I actually got used to doing because of Malison. And actually because of an unrelated earlier first-person shooter project too. That was another place where I did that. You see those yellow frames, those yellow lines around these monsters? These actually represent the height that I'm working with. This is like the height in pixels that I'm working with for the battle screen. Yeah. Now the monsters can be a bit bigger because there is actually some room below here. But that's where the battle panel, the battle menu appears. So I need to not go over this if I don't want any part of the monster to be hidden. I want it to fit completely in the screen without getting hidden. And then if I go above this, it means I'm okay with the monster being partially hidden. Like in the case of the tentacles here. So yeah, I always keep something like this to remind me of the correct dimensions. Because it's really frustrating to draw like a big thing and then realize the dimensions were all wrong. You really want to avoid that. I mean, usually if you do that, you can kind of save it by... like, you can kind of try to resize things. But it takes work. There's a lot of cleanup to do. And it's frustrating to waste that kind of time. It happens. It happened to me on this project. A lot of early monsters, I made them way too tall. Because I was basing my the size I was working with. I was basing it off of the actual battle background assets. But the battle background assets are way bigger than they need to be. And that screwed me up completely. So you can't actually use the battle backgrounds as a measure of how big the monsters can be. Yep. Because the battle backgrounds need to have a wide margin outside of them for screen shakes. Let me show you. So like here, I actually see the black outside of the background there. This is all the extra space outside of the actual battle background. And this is because, even though the actual screen is just this size, when the screen shakes, it needs to actually move left and right. And so it gives you some extra space so you can draw the background a bit wider. So that when the screen shakes, you actually see more details on the sides. Yeah, a battle background for the rat killer scene would be a good idea. So how did I figure it out? I just made a bunch of different versions of a battle background with different markers for sizes. And I just like did trial and error. This was it here. So I took a battle background and just put these markers in there. And I used that to adjust the size exactly over time. I just modified where the lines were, then reloaded it until it fitted. Yeah. It was tedious, but you know, you gotta do it. Yeah. And now I just keep in mind that exact height, because the height is really the important thing. Just to make sure I don't make that mistake again. Alright, these guys are done. I'm happy with those. I'm pretty happy with those. Okay. What else? What else could I draw tonight? What else could I draw tonight and still have a little bit of this here? What other creature could you fight?